Okay. So in 2018, she joined the Southern Nevada Regional Professional Development Program team as a math coach and trainer. She is an alumna of Public Education's Foundation Teachers Leadership Academy and Understood X Blue Engine Fellowship. Jen is a 2022-2023 Teach Plus Nevada Senior Policy Fellow, a community manager with Digital Promise Coach PLC, and was on the 2022 Digital Promise Learner Variability Navigator Practitioner Advisory Board. In 2022, she became a 200-hour certified yoga teacher and earned a social emotional learning facilitator certificate from Breath for Change. Jan is passionate about energy mindfulness, how to better manage our energy in order to maximize our time, and leveraging teachers' leadership to impact student outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Jen Lochner. Take it away, Ma'am Jen.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. All right. So I'm just putting into the chat box one more time. I do see 6 of you have synced up with the Pear Deck. And again, that is the way that you're going to be able to get that student takeaway at the end that has all the slides, all the hyperlinks, all the information in there. And then it also allows you to be able to interact with each of the slides. So again, just really encourage you to take that opportunity to do that. Okay, our session is focused on math literacy. And so I appreciate you choosing to be able to engage with me today, this morning for this hour, because literacy gets talked about a lot in our school settings, but oftentimes math kind of gets ignored when it comes to that, or folks try to say, oh, literacy is going to look like this in your math class. This is how and why everyone is a reading teacher. And whether you agree or disagree with that is irrelevant. The bottom line is there is such a thing as actually math literacy. Like that is a word, that is a terminology. It does exist. And it's something that we need to be thinking about in our classrooms in terms of what does this look like and sound like. And so we're going to talk just really briefly, dipping our toe in some of these different ideas about vocabulary questioning strategies. And then if we have time, we'll dip our toe in a little bit of discourse. So one of the things that I always like to do is start off with a little bit of humor. And I'm sure that at this point in the school year, maybe many of us have already experienced this, right? The honeymoon phase lasts maybe a day, a week. And so we give these directions. Everyone's like, yeah, we got it. And then you release them and someone or many says, wait, what are we doing? Wait, what am I supposed to be doing? And so we definitely can feel that emotion aspect. I would like to do a quick pulse on who is in the room. So on your Pear Deck tab, you have some multiple choice options. So elementary school, middle school, high school, strategist, administrator, and then of course the illustrative other. So if you would be willing to please interact with that. So we've got 6 out of 7 folks have responded. So the majority of those in the room are middle school. So near and dear to my heart, my primary lane is middle school math for supporting those teachers. And that's why, of course, this is the graphic, the meme that I chose to be able to represent that, because it does feel like, hey, there's the elementary school teachers are like, frou-frou, right? And I taught elementary, so like I remember those days. High school is like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then middle school, we are the gladiators in the arena, definitely sometimes feeling at war. So when we think about this idea of literacy in any of our content areas, we are asking for a deeper level of thinking. So you could equate this to a little bit of rigor, but it's not just rigor. So I'm not using that terminology, but I appreciate this quote by David Perkins, where he analogizes it to walking. Many of us know how to walk. So everyday walking, we don't necessarily put a lot of intention behind unless we're on uneven ground and we're really having to pay attention. I was at the dog park this morning, and so I'm making sure I'm not walking through dog poop or whatever, right? So, I mean, so if we're just walking on the sidewalk, we might not be having to say, right foot, left foot, wait, pick up this one, put it down. How am I? We are naturally doing it. It is automatic. We're not putting a lot of energy and intention towards it. And so when we start thinking about that and now analogizing it to a 100-yard dash, that's different. That is not the same as everyday ordinary walking. We need to think about all the different layers and components that's going to help us move from everyday ordinary walking to being able to perform in a 100-yard dash. There's a lot of nuances going on. You have a text box on your Pear Deck tab. I'm going to ask you to please engage in just a little bit of metacognition and go ahead and type a short learning goal that you have for yourself because you chose to engage in this math literacy session. What is one thing you're hoping to get out of our very short time together? Go ahead and type in. It does not have to be a complete sentence if you don't want it to be. It can be just a thought. It can be a phrase. It could even be a key word of what you are processing as to why were you saying, yes, this is the session that I'm intrigued into attending. All right, so 2 of you have started to type. Thank you, thank you. Beautiful. 4 of you have started to type. I appreciate you. Give about 30 more seconds. All right, here's what we've got going on in our space right now. Here's what people are hoping to be able to get out of our time together. So really making sure that we're thinking about how can students both learn and understand the math vocabulary, feeling comfortable with the different terminology that we use, techniques for actually teaching the vocabulary. So we're definitely going to talk about a little bit of that. More engagement, 100%. I hope that you definitely leave this session saying, yes, I have a ton of different ways to be able to think about ways to be able to utilize engagement better with my kiddos, facilitating discussions. And so I'm hearing, so I see the word correct math vocabulary. I'm seeing right vocabulary. And so I would like to push just a touch on that thought process with your language that you're using. And I would encourage you to think about what are asking our students to engage in different ways of speaking about with the math vocabulary. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of ways that I can describe correctly, and it is right, but is it the, oh, the word just left me for what my adjective was for the vocabulary. Is it the, not the proper, is it the accepted word that we're using? Is it the rigid word that we're using? Is it the one that they're going to see on a test, right? Because in real life, and I say real life in quotes because y'all, school is not Narnia. Kids do not come through a portal and come into our classrooms. Our classrooms are real life. They're not like escaping and going out into whatever, but we want to think about the fact that when they are not in our classrooms, how might they be needing to engage in that math for the next grade level, for high school, for maybe a career path that they want? What are some ways that they are going to need to engage with the language of mathematics so that way they can communicate effectively? So again, it's not that it's wrong to describe math in different ways. So if they're describing a face, but they're not using that word, I just encourage you, and I bring up this point and take this time because math is one of the most judgmental content areas that we have in school. And this is also one of the reasons that many of our students shirk away and their confidence is very low because judgment is dripping off of our math content. We can do something about that. We as the teacher, that is something we have control over. We are empowered to start to change that perception with the language that we use. Okay, so just want to plant also that seed in the back of your mind. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so first thing, a reaction guide. You on your Pear Deck tab have this as a hyperlink. I'm going to ask you to click on that hyperlink. It is going to force you to make a copy. That way it's your own copy. You'll be able to type on it. You're not going to turn anything in. This is just for you. And so a reaction guide is a strategy we can use with our students to help their brains know what should I be looking for during today's lesson or over the next few days of lessons. Our students use a lot of cognitive energy in the wrong direction. And it's because when they come into our classroom and they're like, okay, I'm even if the ones that are saying, yeah, I want to focus, I want to pay attention, they will sometimes pay attention to the things that aren't really the most important. It's just but they're putting a lot of cognitive energy into it. We need to redirect and set their brains up for success. So when you click on that reaction guide, you are going to see, I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. So you're going to see this reaction guide. And you can, and I'm one end of the column, it says agree or disagree. So you're going to put an A or a D next to each of those statements. That's all you're going to do right now. So you're going to read 5 statements and you're either going to agree or disagree. So I'm going to give you about 90 seconds to do that quickly. We're at about 15 more seconds. Okay, so again, what this has done is this has now geared your brain into first, you put skin in the game. Brain science says we need our students to put more skin in the game in order to help them retain and strengthen those neural pathways that we are setting down. That is a huge, simple way for us to be able to increase that aspect, is having them put skin in the game. I can't keep my answers in my head. It does not work the same way. It must come out into the universe, whether in written form or in verbal form. If I just say, oh, I've got the answers in my head, it's okay. It does not have the same impact. They have proven that time and time again. Those neural pathways are 100% guaranteed to be weaker than those students who put skin in the game, either written form or verbal form. And I'm also putting you in the driver's seat of your learning. Hattie has that visible learning and has all of that data and research in terms of the effect size. And if we can go ahead and put students more often in the driver's seat of their learning, where they can self-check, that also has a high effect size and can increase and accelerate the learning, because they're going to be able to retain, and those neural pathways are going to be more diverse and stronger. So skin in the game, and then putting the student in the driver's seat, really huge and important, especially when we're talking about vocabulary. So again, set the brain up for success. Reaction guide is one way that we can do that, because now you're going to be focusing, your brain is automatically going to be looking for either validation that you're right on the 5 statements, or if any of them are wrong or incorrect, you are now able to fix it, right? Because again, you're in the driver's seat of your learning. This isn't for points. And I know that that's a whole nother beast, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Okay. All right. So you're going to have that reaction guide off to the side. And again, just a little bit more humor when we talk about vocabulary. So we've got Calvin and Hobbes. It says a bushel is a unit of weight equal to 4 pecks. And Calvin is like, what's a peck? A quick smooch, right? Because a peck is a smooch. And they're like, I don't understand math at all. And so many of our students feel that way, especially with the words that have multiple meanings in different context areas. We need to call that out. We need to help our students know that yes, and that this is okay, because not every single word is going to have a multiple meaning. It's just certain words. It is finite. It is not infinite. We need to be able to be explicit about that. There are some overarching truths about reading in mathematics that is different from other content areas. Let's not be like the Wizard of Oz and hide all of these things behind the green curtain. Let's make it be apparent and obvious and tell our students that yes, we're going to read a little bit differently in math class. And it's okay that we're going to do this a little bit differently, because it's going to help us be successful. All right, so what are some of these overarching truths we need to be aware of? Number 1, Math texts have more concepts per sentence or paragraph than any other types of text. Like, it is dense, it is heavy. So therefore, we need to interact with that text in a little bit of a different way than we do in other content areas. Our texts are going to absolutely have words, but they're also going to have numbers. They're going to have symbols. We have to decode all of that. It's not just words. We have to be able to decode multiple forms of that media. This is a huge one, y'all. I wish we would teach this to our kids early and often to remind them our eyes may need to travel in different patterns. When was that ever taught to me? Let me tell you, never. I had to figure that out on my own. And so how many of our students, when they learn how to read initially, yes, we need to be like, yes, we go from the top down, we go from left to right. Yes. And as they continue through school, once they have that general pattern down, we can now introduce the fact that, and sometimes in math, it's okay if our eyes need to go in a different pattern for a reason. We're not just going to randomly be like, like fireworks on the page, but it doesn't have to be from the top down or from left to right always. We might need to travel in different patterns, especially looking at the graphics or if we're looking specifically for other information. And we do that. We do that naturally. Many of us do as adults, especially as adult math educators. Our kids don't know this, right? And so we're being like the Wizard of Oz. Again, this is a flipping of the script. Main ideas are often at the end. Okay, how our students are taught the main idea is the first sentence of every paragraph. We have to help our kiddos that oftentimes the main idea, especially in the form of a question or of a heavy statement, it's actually at the end in our math texts. Our students need to know this. Help them, set them up for success instead of being like, I'm going to pull the rug out from underneath you and you're going to fall down. And guess what? After you fall down one too many times, you don't want to get back up. And that's normal human tendency. If I keep getting pushed off a cliff, guess what? I'm not coming up to the top of the cliff anymore. I'm going somewhere else. I'm checking out. I'm going to probably exhibit apathetic behaviors, even though I super duper care, but I'm out because I know that the deck is stacked against me. Let's flip that script. Let's help our students see, nah, it's not against you. We're stacking it for you. And here's how. And you can stack it. So the empowerment on the students, it's not me as the teacher, as the authority figure. The students learn how can they stack the deck in their favor, because they're not always going to have you as that linchpin teacher. And then again, with that same idea, the supporting details are the relevant numbers, details, data. And so sometimes those supporting details are like, well, they're not as important. They're just kind of there. No, in math, that's where our heavy hitters are. And so again, we need to be able to interact with that text in a little bit of a different way. All right, we talk a lot about how frustrating it is that the retention factor is so low, right? We say, man, I taught it. I felt like I did my formative assessments. I did my checks for understandings. My kids got it. And then the next day or the next week or the next month, you're like, the kids are looking at you going, no, we didn't learn that. They're like, what are you talking about? This is all brand new to me. And so what that tells us, that feedback is telling us, is that those students did not have the appropriate opportunities or leverage the appropriate opportunities to move that learning into long-term memory. And so their brains sheared it out. It got clipped away. And so we can do things differently as teachers to help with that transference into the long-term memory. So again, these are things that we have control over as the educator in the room. All right, so we want to definitely encode. Many of us do this relatively well. We do encoding. It's a very weak network in the brain where maybe we introduce a new word, we're just that level of introduction. We need to help now. The second layer is getting it into storage. That's still not long-term memory. And so this is the other thing, is that sometimes we think, oh, after we encode, yeah, boom, next step, long-term memory. No. There's another level here of storage. And so this is where it's like almost that in between, that nebulous area where it's not just that weak highway, we're moving it, but it's not quite there yet. This is when, after the introduction, lots of rehearsals, lots of practice in multiple modalities. And so really making sure that we're practicing learning it and using it. Be careful. A lot of teachers, we use it very well. How often do our students use it? I just challenge you to increase your level of awareness, start listening in a different way. When vocabulary is being said in the room, who is saying it? And if it's just one or two kids, then you know those one or two kids are probably going to have a better chance at moving that into long-term memory, and everyone else is going to lose it. So thinking about things like choral response, right? Where you get all the kids in there, that repetition, because words like reciprocal, that is hard to formulate in my mouth. And so I can hear you say it all day long. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. And now when I try to say it, ooh, especially in middle school, because middle school is all about saving face. Saving face trumps everything. And so if there's a chance that I'm going to say it wrong because I haven't practiced it yet, which is 100% chance I'm going to say it wrong, I'm not going to say it at all. I'm not going to engage. And now, once again, you think maybe I don't care because I'm exhibiting apathetic behaviors. So really be thinking about how can you increase those opportunities for rehearsal so that way they can engage in those memory systems to be able to store it. All right, here is the key: retrieval. Retrieval is that final processing step that can help get it from storage into long-term memory. But here's the catch, y'all. If we are only asking students to engage in activities that have them recognize instead of recalling, retrieval, we're part of the problem. We are part of the reason students are going to forget and are not going to retain. So what do I mean by that? So when we're talking about recognition, if the student has it right in front of them, and let's say they're doing a matching, or they're like, oh, this one's this one, or this is A and this one's B, and oh, and then maybe I use the anchor chart, right? So I find it. That's recognition. Recall and retrieval, I have to activate the neural pathways in my brain. That's how I get it out into the universe. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean anchor charts are bad. That doesn't mean matching or ABC is bad. Don't live there. Be aware. If you're living somewhere, that's when we need to be reflective and say, okay, do I have an opportunity to then change things up and create opportunities in other ways, right? So again, I don't want to find more ways for recognition. I need to find more ways for recall and retrieval. So again, it's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not that we never do recognition, but if that's what we're doing either 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% of the time, that's when we have opportunity to say, all right, I need to now start replacing some of those activities, tasks, engagements that I'm having my students practice with, and I need to have them engage in recall and retrieval. Okay, that's what's going to get it. The recognition is like a rehearsal. So think about recognition helping with the storage after you encode. How do I help with the long-term memory? It's the recall and retrieval. Super key, super essential. And again, that's something that we have power over as that educator in the room, as the professional in the room. All right, direct instruction. I hear this all the time. Direct instruction, for some folks, they think it's a taboo word. They're like, oh, that's a dirty word. We can't say that. I'm going to say it loud and clear. Direct instruction is not bad. Now, how you engage in direct instruction, that's a whole different story, right? Are there ineffective ways to engage in direct instruction? Yes. Are there ineffective ways to do project-based learning? Yes. Okay, there's ineffective ways to do everything. There's effective ways to do these as well. So I want to make sure that you are aware and feel empowered to know that, yes, direct instruction with vocabulary is a good way and is effective to be able to get our kids to learn the vocabulary. They're not going to learn it and stumble across it on their own. This is something we need for direct instruction, for vocabulary. All right. We have to, though, be aware. Sometimes there's words that we're teaching for recognition. We need to honor that. If we just need them to have it for recognition and not full ownership, know that. Look at your vocabulary list. Know which ones are the heavy hitters and know which ones are kind of surface. Be aware of that. Let that guide your instructional decisions, because we do have X number of minutes with our kids. We have to make prioritized decisions. And so if your goal is word recognition, you can do 20 words a week. That is a-okay. If we want our students to have full acquisition, meaning they have full ownership of that word, then we need to make sure that we're not doing more than 5 of those words a week. So just something to think about, right? Again, we need to prioritize. These are hard choices we have to make as educators. But again, if we want our students to actually move on and not be a jack of no trade, we have to make decisions. We have to be able to decide those things. All right. So on your Pear Deck tab, we've talked a lot already so far about different vocabulary. We've looked at some of the different aspects of the brain science behind it. I would love you to please use your Pear Deck tab. You have a text box. You can either use this sentence frame, or if you would like to jot down either a thought, an idea, a connection that's running through your own mind right now, please go ahead and type that. So either type using this sentence frame, or feel definitely free for dealer's choice. Go ahead and type in that text box, either an idea, a connection, or a thought that you have so far. All right, 3 of you are typing. Thank you so much. And Deborah, I am going to put the Pear Deck link into the chat box so that way you can sync up if you'd like, so that way you can still get a student takeaway. All right, here's what our responses are right now going on. So question, how effective are the word walls I spend so much time on? I hear you. So again, that's kind of like the direct instruction. Word walls can be effective, but if we're using them in appropriate ways with our students. And then notebooks, I mean, same thing. Those are definitely loaded questions. And yeah, but vocab is so much of what is needed and so hard. So we have to find different ways. And so we're going to get into that. I'm going to give you some more ideas of different games and strategies and techniques that we can use in our kids that are quick and fast, that will help increase the number of times that we're able to be able to engage in this vocabulary learning. Yeah. Now I know that direct instruction can and should also be used. Yeah. And again, right, it's this balance. It's this idea of trying to find that sweet spot to where we're not living in one arena. And that is really when we're able to then truly design with the margins in mind and really be able to be more inclusive with our instructional decisions, is when we're able to do that. So I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, saying the words is important. Yes, because they have to feel how it feels informing of their mouth, coming out of their lips, the whole 9 yards. It is a thing, not just when students are learning how to speak in those early years of their life. It's forever. I have to say it. I have to feel how that is on my mouth. Let's see here. Yeah, step-by-step work. Yep. Yep, they forget a lot. I hear you. No, absolutely. Okay, we are going to move on. So before we get into some different ideas and techniques, we're going to go back to that reaction guide. So on the reaction guide, sentence number 1, children learn words primarily through lessons taught at school. And so normally if we were in a face-to-face arena, I would be like, put up, an A or a B, or put up a 1 or a 2. I know some folks have their cameras off, so I'm not going to engage in that way based upon that aspect. But children do truly learn words through lessons taught at school. When we're talking about vocabulary that's there, if you look at the number of words students learn over their lifetime, the majority of the words that students learn who are in middle to high SES, the words that they learn out of school is more, but students who are in low SES conditions and environments, they actually end up learning more words at school through those lessons. So we need to kind of be aware of that. So so that was kind of a catchy sentence in the sense of it kind of depended on there. Number 2, vocabulary and word identification are essentially the same thing. No, they are not. Okay, so really make sure that as we were talking about that, make sure that if you need to jot down any evidence in that last column that you're typing that in from what we had just talked about. Looking at words in the dictionary is an effective vocabulary learning technique. No, that's actually the worst. So that is a practice that you use. I heavily encourage you to kick that one to the dumpster and find other ways. They have proven again and again through research that that is actually the most ineffective way for students to learn vocabulary. Teaching vocabulary is connected with teaching background knowledge. Yes, right? Because that's part of the context. So that's why when we're talking about the multiple meanings of the words, especially in math, we need to have that background knowledge, that context, the conceptual aspects. What that does is that creates more neural pathways, right? So there's not just one, but I've got several. That's going to increase the chances of me being able to retrieve at a later date and in another situation. Direct instruction is the most effective way to teach vocabulary in school. Yes, it is. It is the most effective way. And so now, having said that, though, remember that we need to, after doing the direct instruction, we need to have them engage in a lot of rehearsals. We need to have them engage in retrieval. And we can do those things embedded within a direct instruction, right? Because direct instruction, we can jump to guided practice, come back to direct instruction, jump to cooperative groups and learning or an activity, and then come back to direct instruction. We can jump into a game, right? And then come. So yes, no, it absolutely is the most effective way to be able to start that. All right, so here are some ideas on what can we do with our kiddos. So card sorts, my elementary folks, we use this strategy so much. It is such a powerhouse. Card sorts. Secondary teachers, we drop this like a hot potato. And I get it. I know why. I know why I dropped it when I moved from elementary. When I moved from 2nd grade to 6th grade, I was like, I've got 180 kids now. You're crazy if you think I'm going to manage and cut things into a Ziploc bag and pass those out and collect them back. And that's bananas. Because especially in middle school, that oh, I'm missing this piece. Yeah, where did it go? Somebody put it in their pocket. I mean, who knows? So I encourage you, if you're at the secondary level, don't drop this strategy like a hot potato. Use digital. Use Google Drawings to be able to create electronic card sorts. They're just as powerful because we're still activating certain things. The only difference is that instead of touching with my fingers, I'm using the keyboard or a mouse to be able to drag, but I'm still activating the same things in my brain in terms of sorting, because I still need to think, okay, if this is my category header, what belongs here? What belongs over here, so on and so forth. So I just really encourage you not to drop that. The next one, which one doesn't belong? So which one doesn't belong? If you have not heard of this strategy, I encourage you to definitely check this out. Tanya, thank you so much for the chat box. Yes, Desmos is also great for card sorts. So if you're like Google Drawings, what? But you are familiar with Desmos, that's another great platform to be able to develop those and have your kiddos engage. Thank you so much. So which one doesn't belong? There's a ton of these already created. You do not need to create these on your own. Do not waste your time. Here is the power behind which one doesn't belong. There is not one right answer. There is not any wrong answer up there based upon accurate justification. That's the key. Now, there is incorrect justification and rationale, that part, but every single one of these answers is absolutely correct with various justifications. There's not just one justification for each one of these. There are multiple for why each one of these would not belong. So that's why I encourage you that if you use this strategy, do not start to create your own right away, because if you create one and you end up making an option that is really the answer, and the other, or you create one where an answer actually is wrong, there is no possible justification, you will emotionally betray your students and they will peace out for the rest of the year. Like you can do a hustle and try to gain them back. You might not. It is very probable that you have lost them for the rest of the year. You cannot emotionally betray our students, especially in math class, because again, it's dripping with judgment. And so that trust that we have to build with our kids when we're teaching math is that much more harder and critical to develop and keep and sustain throughout the year. So, so please be cautious. I would encourage you use the ones that are already created. The website is at which one doesn't belong.ca. That's the main website where they've got a ton created. I'm sure there's another website out there because there's a lot of other mathematicians and math educators who have created some and had the field testing, but that's a really good place to be able to start. All right, so we're going to actually do one on your Pear Deck tab. I'm going to ask you to enter in a number. So you've got 4 numbers. We've got a 15, a 5, a 21, and a 25. Enter into your Pear Deck tab, please. Which one of those does not belong? So either 15, 5, 21, or 25. Which one does not belong? All right, 4 of you have started to type. Thank you, thank you. Awesome. All right, so I'm wondering if I can have a couple people unmute just very quickly. So Katie, you picked 21. Would you be willing to unmute and tell us why?
Sure. It's not divisible by 5.
Nice, thank you. Yes, now I want to capitalize on that. So if I'm in a classroom and I need to make sure that I'm spiraling in or teaching about divisibility, okay, how do we know if a number is divisible by 5, right? Like this is a great opportunity to be able to now decide which one doesn't belong. Do you want to utilize based upon, is it connected to what I'm teaching? Is it something I need to spiral back to? All of those different things. Am I just trying to get my kids comfortable talking to the class with one another, all of those different aspects. Jamie, if I can please come to you, would you be willing to unmute and tell us why you picked 5?
I picked 5 because it's the only prime number.
Oh, so again, right? Like this is just, I didn't have any of this planned in my mind. This is natural and organic. And so you will have those opportunities as well. When students share out their answers, you will be able to decide, is that something I want to now piggyback off of? Is that something I want to leverage? Do I now want to ask students to turn and talk and now tell each other, wait, I heard you say the word prime. What the heck is a prime? Turn and talk and tell your neighbor what a prime number is. What's the other type of number besides prime? And I mean, just the options are endless for when we're getting our students to engage in vocabulary in short stunts, short periods of time. I don't need you to stand up and give me a dissertation. I don't need you to write a paragraph, right? Like these are little things. This is not going to hijack your lesson. So you can insert these sorts of things. Now, here's the next thing that's super cool about which one doesn't belong. You're going to get non-mathematical answers. And that is okay, because this is called accessibility, and I can leverage from what other people are saying. So for example, when we're looking at this one, I could have also said 25 because purple is not a primary color, right? Like there's just so many things. I could have said 15 because the sum of the digits is even. I mean, so many. And now once your kids, and I guarantee you, some of your kids are going to find these things. And when they say them, other students are going to be like, wait, what? And then, oh, I'm going to find one that no one else found. You want to talk about the heaviness of thinking that is going to, and the level of engagement with, and they're going to want to find math. So even, sometimes we're going to want to find weird off the ball things. But a lot of your kids are also going to be like, oh, wait, what about this? And their brains are now going to be a little bit more creative when I'm looking. That's what I want. Mathematicians are actually super creative because they look at math problems in as many different perspectives as they're malleable. We are flexible. We need our students to be too. This is a way to be able to get them, as well as vocabulary. Now, as you engage in this strategy, if you want to then put bumper rails on, you could put a word bank up on the wall and say, okay, we're going to do a which one doesn't belong. And in your justification, you need to use one of these words. Now I'm going to circle back to the word wall. How are we maybe using the word wall app, kind of basically, if you've ever heard of app smashing on iPads and other devices, this is strategy smashing, right? So you're saying, okay, we're doing this strategy and we're going to blend this one in, just like how I gave the example with the turn and talk, right? So in the middle of a which one doesn't belong, absolutely turn and talk. Let's leverage what the students are bringing forward now. More ownership is on the students. The students are more so in the driver's seat because you didn't say out of the box, talk to each other what prime numbers are. A kid offered up that word and then you leveraged it to be able to move it forward. You can make those strategic decisions on the fly. You can also utilize pictures, graphics. So here on this one, I just have a blue light bulb on the right-hand side of your Pear Deck tab. Go ahead and grab that blue light bulb and drag it over to which one of those graphs do not belong. And if you don't see a blue light bulb on the right-hand side of your Pear Deck tab, you may have to refresh your screen. I know that happened last week with some folks, and then once they refreshed their screen, their Pear Deck tab screen, that they were able to then see the blue light bulb. Okay, see some people dragging. Perfect. 2 people have started to drag their light bulb. Awesome, awesome, awesome. We're at 3 people. We're at 4. This is super interesting. And that's the other really cool thing about this too, is that when your kids start sharing out, you're like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that, right? And so far, here's what people are thinking. A lot of people are picking the same one. Now, again, that doesn't mean that that's the only one, but maybe some students are kind of like thinking along the same lines. Maybe there was something that you just recently taught that leaned them over into many of them picking the same one. So again, really cool way, which one doesn't belong. What's another layer to which one doesn't belong that we can do? Sentence stems. So we know we've got students who are practicing learning English in our math classes. And so we can also, when I mentioned the word bank as one idea, if you wanted to put bumper rails on, you could also offer up sentence stems so that way you make it more accessible, more inclusive to all of your kiddos. So if a kid is like, yeah, like I have an idea, but I don't know how to say it, right? I don't know how to communicate it. We can absolutely bring in sentence stems with this activity, with this strategy to be able to help support that language. Again, making them use it, having these words formulate on my mouth matters, and being able to formulate and say these sentences also matter. It's going to increase that level of communication, which again is strengthening those neural pathways, which is going to increase their chances at retaining and retrieving at a later date. All right, Desmos was brought up by Tanya. I want to make sure that you all know that there is another activity within Desmos that's already pre-created, and it's called polygraph. So if you'd be willing to use your reaction emoji or put in the chat box, let me know, have you heard of polygraphs before within Desmos? So either use your thumbs up emoji on your Zoom screen, or you can, it was just super funny since the keynote speaker talked about how the thumbs up made us be old, or you can put in the chat box, yes or no. How many of you have heard of polygraph? Okay, so we got a couple of no's. That excites me. I'm always loving whenever I get to share something that's new and different, especially when we think, oh, everyone's heard of this. They don't need to hear about it again. Okay, super awesome. So half of our space is like, no, we've never heard of this. So within Desmos, if you don't have an account yet, I do have the link on your Pear Deck tab. Teacher.desmos.com is how you sign up for a free account. It is not paid. It is free. And then when you search for the activities, they have, I want to say 54 pre-made polygraphs. And so what a polygraph is, I'm looking at our time. I was going to have us play. I'm just going to describe it and move on. It's like the game Guess Who. So if you remember that game back in the day, you would have 2 players. One person would choose one of the people, and then the other player would have to ask yes and no questions and then they would then try to, in the fewest number of questions, guess which person the other person had picked. And so with this, it's with a math spin. And so on this game, what happens is when the students join, the computer automatically pairs them up. So you don't have to do that. The computer automatically pairs kids up so they can play with people from across the room. They could even play with people in the next classroom next door. So think about those implications, right? Super fun. And so then one person is the guesser and one person is the picker. And so on this one, I just did shapes. And so one person would pick a shape, and then now the other person starts asking questions, and the other person can say yes, no. And they added a new feature a couple years ago. They can also now say, I don't know, which is super cool, because I had a couple kids be like, hey, you said no, and I got this wrong. And that was actually a yes, which is awesome. Like, I want my kids to be passionate when they learn math. And so, so I appreciate them now having the I don't know option for the person who is answering those questions. And you on your teacher dashboard can watch what questions are being asked, how they're being answered. And now you could pause it, whole group, do a little bit of direct instruction based upon what you see. It's the just-in-time teaching, not just in case, just-in-time teaching, and then release them and let them be able to continue. Once they finish, they have to answer a couple of reflection questions, and then they get paired up again with someone else. So that way you don't have to worry about, man, but what if a kid finishes early? No worries. It will automatically do that. Polygraph. So when you go into Desmos and you log in, I believe the search bar is still on the left-hand side for when you search for activities. And if you type in the word polygraph, it should pop up. Katie, let me know if it doesn't. And I will connect with you later to make sure that then I know if they changed something within the past month. I need to make sure that I know that as well. All right, another idea. Some of us maybe have been trained in the thinking maps. So there's 8 thinking maps. At one point, CCSD had paid for many schools and teachers to be trained in that. So I'm sharing one idea with the circle map. You don't need to know about thinking maps. I'm just letting you know where it's attached to. So you've got a circle, and then you've got a question mark on the inside, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are clues behind each of those numbers. And then there's a certain word that's behind the question mark, or it could be an image, but most often a word. Now, here's the thing. Just like with the polygraph, just like with Guess Who, you want to try to guess right in the fewest number of hints. The first hint is not going to be obvious. It's going to be a pretty vague hint, and it'll get more and more specific. So that way, by the time if you have to uncover clue number 5, most likely you should be able to get it right. Again, this is having to use a lot of vocabulary, a lot of descriptive. Again, the students have a little bit more ownership. They're more in the driver's seat, and it's a game. It's fun. So anytime that happens, super, super important that we're thinking about, I'm not trying to put on a dog and pony show, but I know the more fun my kids are having, the more likely, as long as I have it tied to standards and I'm teaching to the standard and I'm thinking about the vocabulary in appropriate ways, then it's going to help with those neural pathways, because these are the rehearsals. These are the rehearsals, which also these rehearsals are leveraging the recall and retrieval if I have it set up correctly. So just thinking about that, right? Because we need to align. We need to stack things as much as possible rather than putting 1,000 Lego pieces all horizontally on a plate. They're going to fall off. But if I stack my Legos, then I'm having deeper impact without things falling off my plate. So thinking about that. All right, I'm watching our time. We're going to keep going. Would you rather? Woo, super fun. Now, big caveat. If you are on a school computer, I'm going to say this again. If you are on a school computer, do not Google would you rather. Big caveat. If you're on your personal computer, you can do whatever you want. If you're on a school computer, do not Google would you rather. There's an actual website for this. It's wouldyourathерmath.com. And so what this does is this kind of flips the script a little bit on the questioning. So we're talking about this questioning technique also to be able to get our kids to engage not only with math, but again, with that vocabulary. And so this always starts with would you rather. You don't see the words would you rather, but it starts with it. Would you rather have 7/8 of your favorite pie or 11/14 of your favorite pie? Now, this question is this question that we see 1,000 of these in our textbooks, right? And when kids see this, what do kids do? Well, right? Like, even if they know it, they're like, I don't look at that. I don't want to do that. So it's the same question, but what it does is it gets a little bit deeper. I'm not just saying which one. I always need to justify. I always need to say why when I'm doing the would you rather. So if I am just like wanting to pig out and eat the majority of the pie because it's my favorite pie, then maybe I'm like, yeah, I would do 7/8 because I want the majority of the pie. So I'm still knowing like what you're talking about. Maybe though you say, I'm going to do 11/14 because I actually want to end up sharing the pie with some people. Maybe I'm on a diet. So between those two fractions, 11/14 is better for me to pick. This is still telling us information about what the student knows or what they think that they know. Again, in a different type of context, and it is this exact same problem, just in that different way. So now we can start bridging the gap. So I'm not saying that we're never going to give these problems to our kids. We are. But I want to bridge that gap. So that way, when they get to these questions, they know what to hook it on. So again, one more time, I don't want anyone getting in trouble at school. The website is wouldyourathermath.com. Another cool fun fact, the guy who founded this website is from Pahrump. His name is John Stevens. So that's kind of cool. We got a Nevada celebrity. All right, another strategy. What is the same? What is different? So same, but different. Okay, in my early days in the classroom, we had talked about Marzano's high yield strategies, and there were 7 of them. One of those high yield strategies was compare and contrast. And I don't know about you all, but whenever I attended a school training on anything, they gave examples for ELA, for social studies, for science, and they looked at us math folk and said, figure it out. You have to use it. Good luck. And it really bothered me because I'm like, we matter too. Why don't tell us to figure this out. And so we often were like taking these square pegs and mashing them into a round hole for compliance, right? And that wasn't doing good for our students. I wanted to use compare and contrast. And you know what trainers told me every single time? Oh, use a Venn diagram. You really? That's all you got? And so that was all that they had. I finally came across this strategy called same but different. Yes. This is compare and contrast in math, and it makes sense for how it is stated. So you would have 2 things, whether they're pictures, whether they're expressions, whatever it is, and the students have to look at them and identify what is the same about these things, what is different. Now we're setting our brains up to compare and contrast in an effective way. We're using possibly vocabulary. If I don't use vocabulary, that's opportunity for me to be able to lean in an organic situation, not telling my kids that they're wrong when they're describing things, but I can say, ooh, there's a word for that, right? Like that, because that's the purpose of vocabulary. The purpose of vocabulary is like a shortcut. Instead of saying 10 words to describe something, we can say 1, as long as we know what that 1 word means. So it's, hey, we've got a shortcut for that. We could say this instead of blah, 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 blah. Same thing, what we do with algorithms in math. They're shortcuts. They're just a quicker way of getting there. Use real life examples. I know I look at this and I'm like, oh, those were the days when gas was that low, right? I'm like, oh, reminiscing. But this is enough. So being able to help our students see math, again, not saying that this is what's in real life, because again, school is not Narnia, but this would be something maybe they would see out on the street when they're driving around with their families, when they're walking through their neighborhoods. And now they can start making this association of, yeah, on one sign, I see a decimal with a fraction. What the heck is that? And then on the gas pump, I see only the decimal. Like, how are these the same? How are they different? Like, what's going on here? Really neat, rich discussions to be able to be had. All right. I would normally at this point have you jot something down, but I'm feeling pressured by the time. I know I got 4 minutes and we are going. I want to share some more ideas so that way you can really think about what might you want to do in your time frame to be able to make some different decisions. All right. So one of the things that I had said was the questioning strategies, the questioning techniques. Questioning itself could literally be a 3-credit course at a university. We are not born knowing how to question effectively. It is a skill. Now, I say that by the reason I point that out is because anytime something is a skill, there is hope. There is hope because if it's a skill, I can get better. I can learn it. I can practice. I can get feedback because without feedback, I might be stumbling around in the dark and practicing something that is not effective. And then I think that it is. So feedback is important. But here we can link it to DOK, depth of knowledge. So DOK is depth of knowledge. And I can, in my sleep, and I'm sure you can too, I can ask DOK 1 questions all day long. Like I don't have to plan those. They are in my back pocket. I can do it while I'm driving. I can do it while I'm cooking dinner. I can do it while I'm hiking, like no problem. Now, can I ask DOK level 2, 3, and 4 questions? That's a little bit tougher. That takes a lot more skill than many of us maybe have developed to this point. So I encourage you to take a look at this table after the conference and be able to see, look at a lesson plan and decide very specifically and strategically, where should I put a DOK2 question and what should that question be? Knowing that I need a backup, because I guarantee you the first time you try this on your kids, you're going to get crickets. You're going to get deer in the headlights and you're going to be like, maybe I'm never going to do this again because that was an epic fail. Be prepared. Be prepared for those crickets. So when you ask a DOK2 question, especially if it's not something in commonplace, be ready with some DOK1 questions that are going to help prime the pump, and then you can go back, right? It's that yo-yo to be able to go back to that DOK2 to be able to push the kiddos in that direction. Evolution of this, you could even get your students to start writing their questions. So if you're taking Cornell notes and the students are taking notes on the right-hand side, you could then eventually have them go back and say, okay, I want you to write a DOK1 question on the left-hand side that the answer is already on the right-hand side. What question could we ask about what's over on that side? So that's just simply an evolution. Another idea for connecting to this idea of DOK and changing the questions that we ask to be able to really help our students with math literacy is Robert Kaplinski. So if you don't know about him, you're going to want to go check him out. He's got matrices developed for all the grade levels, and he shows you what kinds of questions do we see 1,000 of. That's the DOK1. How can I change that to a DOK2 or 3 and really increase the rigor and really get our students to have multiple access points in being able to engage in the math content? Y'all, my time is up. So when you get your student takeaway, you are going to have a lot more information, a lot more ideas in there for vocabulary, questioning techniques, as well as moving into discourse. I appreciate you. I thank you. And I know Mike has put the evaluation link in the chat box as well as the attendance link. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate all your techniques and strategies presented here. I guess a lot of us are overwhelmed by a lot of them, but you can always contact Jen if you have questions. And thank you very much for attending session number 1.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have to give a quick shout out to Nermeen. Hello, it's been forever since I've seen you, back from our Sedway days. All right, y'all. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. I'll be doing that students takeaway in about 60 seconds. So you'll have my email as well. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
We're gonna have a little break and start our session in 4 minutes. I'm just gonna we have our guest speaker with us here. And so I'm gonna make both of you
That sounds great, Mike. Thanks and good morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
Mike, I like your headphones.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's a mic. Oh, we have 2 mics
Yes.
here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I like both of your headphones.
Thanks. It's hopefully it's not too loud in here with the background noise.
Okay, let me make Mike Steele as well as a co-host. Okay, it keeps jumping. It just got it.